Vladimir Putin and I have worked out a deal where Bashar al-Assad's going to announce tomorrow that he's destroying all this, he's giving up his weapons. So come in, I'd like to say hello to you, but then I want you to go back to Geneva to finish wrap up this accord. And he did. So if there's anyone undeserving of being praised for getting those chemical weapons destroyed, it's John Kerry. Why do I mention this? I mention this because I don't know who the people were in Ireland that decided to give him this prize in Tipperary, but I suspect they're victims of invincible ignorance. Now, are they to be blamed? Well, where are they to see in the press? Where are they to see in the mainstream press that no, Kerry was not responsible? He was just the opposite. It was Putin and Obama working behind Kerry's back deliberately to achieve this accord. It's so clear from anybody who watched this, but it's not in the media, okay? And so if it's not in the media, people don't know it. I don't know if it's correct to call them invincibly ignorant or not, but these people who gave this award clearly didn't know which end was up with respect to this very key set of circumstances where Obama avoided pushing the button for war, shock and awe on Syria, which was supposed to happen the next day, okay? So this is really important, and it sort of leads me into making what should be a major point in any talk, and that is that after 50 years in Washington, you can say you've seen a lot of change, right? So I'm going to say I've seen a lot of change. But there's one change that dwarfs all the other changes in importance, and that is that we no longer have, in any real sense, a free media. That's big. That is very big. I've been in Germany and Britain for some times, last couple of years. It's not very different there, and I understand it's not very different here. The media is really malnourishing the populace on what they need to know. So that's one of the key points I wanted to make. I didn't look at my watch. What the hell with that? We'll get 10 minutes late. Good. I'd like to talk a little about how we got into the imbroglio in Syria there. But I don't want to forget to point out one thing that means a lot to me, because it illustrates how people like John Kerry really can't be depended upon to have any sort of real empathy or any feel for people less fortunate. How many of you know about the contribution that the American native peoples gave to the Irish during the famine?
Yes.
I do know about that.
Yeah,
Choctaw Indians?
Yes.
Terrific. Okay, good. You just saved me 2 minutes. Now, my point on that is simply that, you know, there's no substitute for having been there. And if you haven't been suffering, if you haven't been marginalized, if you haven't been deprived of the bare essentials of life, you just can't feel in the same way about what's going on to other people, like the people in Syria right now, like the Palestinians, like the people that we are largely responsible for keeping down, the people that, because of what we give to Israel, Israel is allowed to keep these people down. And that's an essential element in this whole equation. So, let me talk a little bit about Syria proper. During this time, this key time, in August 2013, there was a red line. And the red line had been very adroitly given to the president exactly a year before, August 20, 2012. Okay? The president's giving a big press conference, and then somebody slips a little question to Todd, what's his name? Chuck Todd, the NBC guy. And he's like, okay. And then Obama says, okay, last question, Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd says, now, Mr. President, you say you're reluctant to put boots on the ground in Syria, and you're reluctant to be involved militarily anyway, but is there nothing that they could do that would force you to change your mind? And as though reading from a script, he says, yes, there is. If Bashar al-Assad's government started using or moving chemical weapons, that would be my red line. Then I would change my calculus. Okay. So August 12th, 2012, in my view, Obama was mousetrapped. He set the red line, and then August 21, 2013, there are these sarin attacks outside of Damascus. Now, who did them? Well, my colleagues wouldn't say that Bashar al-Assad did them. Why? Because the evidence was really, really poor. Okay? But John Kerry got up on the 30th of August, about 9 days later, and said, Bashar al-Assad's government, Bashar al-Assad's government did 35 times he said that. Okay? 35. I counted them. So, those of you who know Shakespeare know about methinks he doth protest too much. Well, it seemed to be doing that. So, what happened? Well, they were about to press the button when it was learned by the British, of all people, that this sarin was homemade. Okay? This sarin was not the same sarin that we knew to be in Syrian government stocks. Whoa! So what happened? Our chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dempsey, told the president, look, we learned this, and besides, the UN inspectors that have been in Damascus, they're not back yet, so maybe you ought to wait. And anyhow, Obama was persuaded not to push the button. Call the French, tell them to cool down those motors on their jets on the tarmac. Call the Israelis, they don't have to put up their defenses as high as we said they were. We're not going to do a war. Now, a couple of things helped on that, and this is really important. The British, for the first time in, I think it's 3,425 years, voted against the war. That my figure might be a little bit off there. But Parliament voted against going to war. My God. This was 3 days before shock and awe was going to happen on Syria. More important from our point of view, congressmen and senators were home. It was August, right? Vacation. They were home. And there are a whole bunch of people that we rallied, or that need no rallying, and descended on these offices and said, look, we don't want another war, for God's sake. We don't care how you justify this. We don't want you to attack Syria. So as you know, Obama backed off and said, he blamed it on Dempsey, General Dempsey. He said, General Dempsey tells me that we don't have to do this war tomorrow or the next day or the next week or the next month, that we're in place to do it any time we wish, and meanwhile I'm going to Congress to seek appropriate authorization. Wow. No president had said that in decades. Even though, I have the Constitution, Article 1 of the Constitution makes it very clear that who has the power to declare war, like the Congress. But, we've been sort of not thinking about that since World War II, which is the last time we declared war. So anyhow, that's a really interesting story, and partly because it set in motion a whole bunch of things. Now, what happened? Well, it's really hard to explain U.S. policy toward that part of the world, and specifically Syria, without mentioning the name of one country, which is very dangerous to mention in certain circles. Anybody know what that country might be? Israel, right, okay. Now, when this all went down, namely the 5th of September 2013, a very enterprising, if a little naive, New York Times bureau chief from Jerusalem went and talked to several senior Syrian officials. And one of them said, we can tell you what's going on here from our perspective. And she said, that's what I want. What's your preferred outcome in Syria? And this fellow, who was Alan Pincus, who used to be consul general in New York City, he said, well, now, this doesn't sound really humane, but our preferred outcome is no outcome. And she said, traduisez, s'il vous plaît. No outcome. He says, yeah, again, it doesn't sound really good, but We look at it as a playoff game